Hey guys, Mr. Pumpkin here, and welcome to something kind of different. I've been playing a lot of Pax Historia, and more specifically, I've been playing as Japan in the era of the Concert of Europe kind of timeline. So this is a alternate history about what if Japan was a republic in 1815. Um, and I'm gonna apologize for my pronunciation now, but I will keep butchering it probably, but this is the story of Idai Ta I Heyo Nippon. I hope that's good enough. Anyway, this is the story of Idai Ta I Heyo Nippon, an alternate history of a Japanese guild-based republic during the Concert of Europe, starting from a fledgling rebellion during the Tokugawa shogunate to a supreme cultural and technological Pacific power. The start of historical divergence begins from 1600 to 1630. After the Battle of Sekigahara, the Tokugawa shogunate established a rigid peace, but in this timeline, the early shoguns enforced even stricter domain controls than in real history. Daimyo are required to maintain larger Edo residences, draining their treasuries. Samurai stipends are frozen at 1605 levels, never adjusted for inflation or domain needs, and this created a class of underpaid, overeducated, and increasingly frustrated low-ranking samurai, who become the intellectual backbone of later unrest. Meanwhile, merchant guilds, already powerful in Osaka and Kyoto, quietly expand their networks under the shogunate's nose. From 1630 to 1680, Japan's economy boomed, but the Tokugawa court failed to understand the implications. Merchant guilds consolidated into proto-corporate federations, controlling rice futures, shipping, and urban credit. Samurai became dependent on merchant loans, creating a humiliating version of the social hierarchy. The shogunate responded with moralistic edicts condemning merchant greed, but these only deepened resentment. By 1680, merchants effectively ran Osaka's economy, while samurai became symbolic administrators with shrinking real power. This economic inversion became the long fuse of a 1815 explosion. Through 1680 and 1730, rural Japan experienced a quiet political transformation. Village headmen, temple networks, and irrigation councils gained increasing autonomy as domains cut administrative costs. In this timeline, the shogunate tolerated this decentralization because it reduced expenses, but it unintentionally created parallel local governments that operated independently of samurai authority. Buddhist temples regained influence as mediators, educators, and record keepers. By 1730, many villages functioned as self-governing communes, accustomed to solving problems without domain oversight, an essential precursor to a later guild provincial system. From 1770 into 1790, a series of floods, crop failures, and earthquakes devastated multiple domains. The shogunate's disaster response was slow, corrupt, and inconsistent. Buddhist temples and merchant guilds stepped in to provide relief, gaining public loyalty. The emperor's court in Kyoto quietly criticized Edo's mismanagement, reviving the idea that the shogunate has lost the mandate of heaven, a concept normally foreign to Japan but revived during syncretic Buddhist Confucian rhetoric. By 1790, the shogunate's spiritual legitimacy was visibly cracking. During 1790 and 1800, disaffected samurai formed clandestine networks across Osaka, Edo, and Kyoto. Some were ideological, others pragmatic, but all shared a belief that the Tokugawa order was failing. Merchant guilds secretly funded these groups to protect their interests. Village headmen provided safe houses and food. Buddhist temples offered ideological justification, framing the crisis as a disharmony of the realm. These networks did not seek revolution, but they created the infrastructure that would make one possible. At the turn of the century, from 1800 till 1810, the shogunate attempted late reforms, tax restructuring, anti-merchant edicts, and samurai retraining programs, but all failed. Domains were bankrupt, samurai were starving, merchants were resentful, villages were autonomous, the emperor's court was quietly emboldened. The country was stable only on the surface. When a global climate shock of 1815 approached, Japan was already a dry forest waiting for a spark. From 1810 until 1815, minor crop failures and rising rice prices foreshadowed a coming catastrophe. The shogunate blamed merchants, merchants blamed samurai, samurai blamed the shogunate. Villages hoarded grain, temples warned of cosmic imbalance, Ronin networks grew bolder. In 1815, an early Tambora eruption triggered the Great Tenpo Shock. Japan was primed for a systemic collapse. The revolution was not caused by disaster, it was merely accelerated by it. Beginning in November of 1815, the Tambora famine was in full swing. The Japanese Reformation Union, a coalition of unlikely allies from impoverished low-ranking samurai, urban merchant guilds seeking political recognition, village headmen seeking further autonomy, Buddhist temples opposing Confucian dominance, and emboldened Ronin networks rose in grand and somehow unified rebellion against the Tokugawa shogunate. This movement was not ideological, it was moral. The shogunate had failed to maintain harmony, and the people were suffering. It wasn't until the rice market of Osaka faced grain store seizures from the shogunate in 1816 that the revolution truly began. Merchant guilds refused to yield, samurai of Osaka Castle mutinied, Ronin opportunism seized river warehouses, and peasants demanded relief. The shogunate sent troops he could barely feed, and defections began to rise. The campaign to dismantle the Tokugawa shogunate began. Merchant guilds across Kansai were consolidated under a unified credit system, effectively decoupling from the shogunate's debased currency and regional economy. Wealthy financiers, fearing samurai debt cancellations, funneled reserves into the Union's nascent military infrastructure. Simultaneously, the Fukushi Initiative redirected guild transport networks toward domestic grain distribution, saving thousands from starvation in Kansai and Tohoku, and shifting peasant loyalty away from Edo. The Union then sabotaged maritime trade routes and the Nakasendo Road to the capital, causing crippling rice and charcoal shortages in Edo and triggering mass defections among the shogun's impoverished retainers. The Voluntary Militia Committee was established, recruiting men and women of all classes and arming them with matchlocks and improvised weapons. A landmark speech in Kyoto denounced the shogunate and proclaimed a guild-based republic, prompting Kyushu and Kochi to formally renounce Tokugawa authority and pledge allegiance to the Union. In July of 1860, the Tokugawa shogunate issued a final ultimatum demanding dissolution of the guilds, but the Union openly rejected it, declaring war. Pro-shogunate daimyos marched towards Chubu. The Union repurposed merchant rice runners and coastal vessels into a robust military supply chain, while hundreds of disenchanted Ronin integrated into the Voluntary Militia Committee as command staff, rapidly professionalizing the citizen army. By October of 1816, Union vanguards pushed into Chubu, utilizing amphibious landings to seize mountain passes. The shogun's authority in central Japan shattered as local daimyos defected or declared neutrality. By May of 1817, Union forces reached the borders of Kanto and blockaded Edo Bay, cutting off all relief. Rather than storming Edo, Union command halted at Hakone Pass to allow internal collapse. Concurrently, a naval ultimatum was delivered to Hokkaido Ezo administrators and Ainu chieftains. Faced with a complete blockade, they submitted peacefully, securing vital northern timber and mineral resources. Inside Edo, the outer districts organized into guild councils aligned with the Union. In March of 1818, the shogunate vanguard mutinied over unpaid rice rationing. inviting Union forces into the city. Tokugawa Ienari was placed under house arrest, and the Tokugawa administrative apparatus collapsed entirely. The Union stood as the sole governing authority over the Japanese archipelago. With the shogunate dissolved, the Union issued a general proclamation of commerce, designating Uraga and Nagasaki as managed trade ports to preemptively satisfy foreign powers. Nationwide Reformation festivals were held in former Edo and Kyoto, funded by merchant guilds to foster social cohesion between former samurai and commoners. In October of 1817, delegations in Kyoto had already drafted the Charter of the Reformation, establishing a guild-based republic where political power derives from economic contribution rather than birthright. The People's Guild Council was formally established in June of 1818, providing proportional legislative representation to agricultural, craft, and merchant guilds. The nation was formally reborn as the Republic of Great Nippon. Shortly thereafter, the new republic began expanding and modernizing. Maritime expeditions were dispatched to the loosely governed island of Sakhalin beginning in May of 1819, mapping coastlines and identifying timber and fishing sites, with Russian fur trapping outposts noted nearby. By April of 1820, guild council halls were permanently established in South Sakhalin, formally integrating the island into the republic's economic and administrative sphere. Hokkaido's integration accelerated in late 1819, with new sawmills and foundries fueling the republic's long-term naval ambitions. In March of 1820, a joint diplomatic mission from the UK and the Netherlands arrived at Uraga seeking formal commercial treaties and expanded trade rights. Negotiations resulted in an agreement. Britain offered preferential tariffs on textiles and industrial machinery in exchange for formalized customs duties at Uraga and residential rights for British merchants. The Netherlands requested that its historical Nagasaki privileges be maintained and codified within the new republic framework, particularly regarding European medicinal and scientific imports through Dutch East India networks. The Republic's People's Guild Council agreed to the framework, welcoming both powers. British steam-powered machinery and textile equipment arrived by June of 1820 and were funneled directly into the merchant guilds, rapidly transitioning Japan from cottage industries to proto-factory production, boosting silk and cotton export quality. The first phase of naval modernization at Uraga was completed by March of 1822, replacing traditional junk designs with Western-style hulls reinforced with Japanese cedar and iron. Utilizing guild trade networks, the Republic established clandestine trade links with disenchanted Creole and Mezzo elites in Manila by February of 1821, using Nippon-flagged vessels to smuggle goods around Spanish East Indies restrictions, building both an economic foothold and intelligence network in the Pacific. By April 1823, the Spanish Governor-General in Manila, Mariano Fernandez de Folgueras, initiated a crackdown, arresting several merchants connected to Nippon guilds on charges of sedition. The Republic then faced a decision on whether to abandon or escalate support for its Filipino allies. Through this period, the East India Company consolidated control over Bengal and West Bengal, and by August of 1818 had fully dismantled the Maratha Confederacy following the Battle of Ashti, cementing British hegemony over the Indian subcontinent. In the Americas, Argentine independence was declared in December of 1816. New Granada was liberated at Boyaca in 1819, forming the Republic of Colombia. Mexico declared independence in December of 1821, and Brazil broke from Portugal in November of 1822. Spain's internal crisis deepened in January of 1820 when the Constitution of 1812 was reinstated by military revolt, further crippling its ability to hold colonial territories. The Convention of 1818 settled the U.S.-British border at the 49th parallel, and the Adams-Honest Treaty of 1819 transferred Florida to the United States. Napoleon Bonaparte died in St. Helena in May of 1821, closing the revolutionary Napoleonic era. Following a Spanish diplomatic ultimatum in April 1823, the Republic of Great Nippon publicly withdrew its merchant fleet from Philippine ports to satisfy Spanish demands, while simultaneously launching a covert arms smuggling operation through the Voluntary Militia Committee, funneling matchlocks and gunpowder to Filipino revolutionary cells via small fishing vessels. Simultaneously, the Republic formalized close trade with Taiwan, exchanging textiles and industrial tools for sugar, camphor, and tea, and heavily industrialized Sakhalin, converting fur trapping outposts into coal-powered foundry complexes that unsettled Russian fur trappers in the north. In diplomatic exchanges, Spain accused the Republic of inciting sedition in the Philippines. The Republic denied knowledge, feigning ignorance and offering trade agreements, but Spain rejected this and demanded withdrawal and recognition of Spanish sovereignty. By August 1824, Spanish forces in Manila discovered Japanese-manufactured arms among rebels and threatened to void trade treaties and seize Republic vessels. The Republic publicly apologized and executed low-level smugglers as theater, satisfying Spanish observers while secretly relocating armory guilds deep into the Chubu Mountains and continuing arms flow through disenchanted Dutch traders as intermediaries. The Republic also deployed the First Republic steam frigate to patrol home waters as a deterrent, began integrating veteran samurai and former shogunate officers into a modernized military training program, combining traditional discipline with British infantry tactics, and proposed the Sakhalin Amir Guild joint venture to Russian fur trappers, successfully delaying any formal Russian imperial military push northward by making Japanese presence economically beneficial to both governors. Internationally, Russia and the United States formalized the 54-degree north boundary in the Pacific Northwest in 1824, consolidating American Pacific presence while potentially refocusing Russian attention towards Sakhalin. The Decembrist Revolt of 1825 then plunged Russia into internal crisis under Tsar Nicholas I, granting the Republic a vital window to consolidate northern holdings undisturbed. Spain's colonial situation deteriorated further with the proclamation of Bolivia in 1825 and the fall of Callao in 1826, effectively bankrupting the Spanish treasury and triggering mutinies among Philippine garrisons. By August of 1826, a massive mutiny erupted at the Cavite arsenal, with Filipino rebels seizing coastal batteries. The Spanish governor-general, unable to crush the rebellion, requested neutral mediation. In tripartite diplomatic talks involving Britain as proposed mediator, Spain demanded the Republic guarantee rebel disarmament. The Republic, citing its prior appeasements, refused and formally declared war on Spain in November 1826, triggering the total mobilization decree, commandeering guild shipyards at Uraga, Nagasaki, and Taiwan, converting merchant vessels into armed cruisers, and designating Taiwan as the primary forward staging area. Britain, profiting from Republic trade, remained non-interventionist despite facilitating talks. So, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, leave a like. If you didn't, leave a dislike. And if there's anything you want to tell me, you can join the Discord. Link in the description as always. And that's it for now. Next time, we're going to be talking about the Nipponese-Spanish War over the Philippines. So, that might be interesting. But I guess we'll see. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed. Peace.